Basically, she puts a YouTube video of a baby crying in the background, and she calls his carrier and she says, we got married a couple months ago. My husband's been bothering me about getting my name added to the account. And in like 90 seconds, she was able to add her name on his account and actually change the PIN on his account. And he's got his hands over his face. He can't believe that she's able to do this and to be able to do it so quickly.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security's Security Confidential. We have another great guest today. Got to remind you guys, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us out quite a bit, and it allows us to keep bringing this great content to you. Today, we are fortunate to have Mark Kreitzman join us. Mark has more than 2 decades of experience in the field. Currently, he is the Chief Cyber Evangelist at Efani, and he's on a mission to educate others about mobile identity theft, privacy, and why your mobile phone may be the biggest cybersecurity risk. And as you guys have heard on this show before, it actually is probably one of your biggest cybersecurity risks, if not the biggest. But without further delay, Mark, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you here.
Yeah, I love that introduction and very happy to be here and look forward to this.
Look, we love learning a little bit about your origin story. Tell us how you got not only into cybersecurity, but how did you get into this whole space to begin with, this, and became an entrepreneur? We'd like to get a little bit of background.
Yeah, I'd have to go back a very long ways. I was one of those lucky people where my next door neighbor, my best friend's father, bought the first Apple computer that had come out. I was a little kid typing on it and typing, basic code out of that was in a insert in one of the computer magazines to create a game, and that's kind of how I first got into it. And then just my mind works very well with computers. I've never really taken like computer classes, but I can program, and I've put myself through college programming, writing in like 4 different languages as a consultant while I was going to school. Put myself through the bachelor's and master's by programming, even though I didn't end up with a computer science degree. And the way that I fell into it was when I was only a couple of months into getting my master's, AT&T came in and they actually hired me and had to wait almost a year for me. And it was because of the technical skills. I actually didn't want a career in computer programming, but they hired me for my technical skills. And so I got into telecommunications very young. I graduated from a master's very early age. And so I was very, very young coming into AT&T at the time when they were laying people off. That's a whole nother experience of being in your young 20s while they're simultaneously laying people off
Yeah.
and getting threats about whether I'm going to come to the Christmas party or not. So it's a very unique time, but I stuck through it. And so I got to see the inside of AT&T. I was part of their SS7 organization in my early 20s, which a lot of people don't even know what
Signal
SS7 is,
7.
but it's Signaling 7. So here I am, in my young 20s, my peers are, probably 50, 52 years old. And I'm this sort of young guy coming in. I got, again, like a couple of years later, I'm in a group that was part of where we managed the backbone of the air to ground stations. If you remember the airplanes where they used to have that phone you could pull out with the stretch cord. And so I got to see the inner workings of mobile before AT&T Mobile even became. I was dealing with troubleshooting issues in the backbone of McCall Cellular before it ever even became AT&T Wireless. I ended up through that process. I ended up moving out to Northern California. AT&T gave me like a full move package, everything. And so I was watching the dot-com bubble. It was just like blowing up around. I couldn't understand the business model of any of them. And that ended up being sort of lucky and right at the same time. And I watched it all implode. And then that's when I decided to jump in when it completely imploded. And then I started to see that, okay, there's going to be some companies coming out of this. And I
Wow.
worked for Microsoft for 365 days and 5 minutes and put my 2 weeks in because I wanted to go back and do the same thing. Then I went back and I joined a web security company for enterprise, and I joined them very early. And then Cisco Systems came in and bought them, and they became the main web security solution for Cisco system to offer businesses. Then I went off and did another one, and then in the middle of things, back in 2018, I got mobile hacked,
Wow.
and trying to do my own startup. And so here I was actually trying to get into the crypto space and in the mobile app space because I was very familiar with the mobile space at that point. I'd been in mobile security now at that point, like for 7 years, but wanted to do something on my own, got mobile hacked. And then it just brought all that memory back. I got mobile hacked when I was in the middle of the desert in Arizona and there's no phones around there. And for the entire drive from the middle of Tucson and Phoenix, if you've ever been in that space, it's one highway going north
I
and
have. I've
south.
driven that road many a
There are
times.
there are no payphones out there, and the option is that maybe you run into Costco or something at some point, and then beg somebody to use your phone, or I had to drive to my parents' house, and the Wi-Fi kicks in, and six password resets went on my phone. And it turned out that a third party phone store employee out of Memphis, Tennessee, it took me like 90 days. I had to trick the carrier. I had to trick another third party phone store into giving me information. And it turns out that they ported my number out. And then after 61 minutes and after resetting passwords, they ported it back and they tried to hide it. So I didn't sleep for a couple of months until Efani was started, until I actually got on my own, our own service. And so it wasn't started out of like, boy, I really want to start a mobile operator. It was really started out of like, I'm angry. I've never been this angry. I had, at the time, I was just starting to get into Bitcoin. So I had 2.2 Bitcoin stolen at the time. They got into the hosting account of the startup I was doing. And so it's kind of embarrassing at the same time that here I was at that time with like 18, 19 years of cybersecurity experience, and I had my profile with the carrier set up where I couldn't make a change unless I took my driver's license and my passport into a store. And all it took was a third party phone store employee to lie to the computer 3,000, 4,000 miles away from me. It had no relationship with me, probably saw me like on a YouTube video or on a website somewhere and thought I'd be a target. And
Don't you think that third party employee might have just been a mule? He was being used by somebody else. They probably paid him a couple $100.
so that's how it normally works, is that they have a buddy that works at a phone store, or they're paying him 300 or $3,000, and there's SIM swap forums you can go into and target people, and an employee who may have access to that person could say like, okay, give me like X amount of money, send me Bitcoin. Now, the only reason I say that as a third party employee is because the way that I tricked him is I went to a third party store when I was in South Lake Tahoe, and went in there and said that, hey, this person really helped me. I thought I lost my phone. They switched my SIM card, and I promised I'd give them a gift card, and I never did. Could you tell me the store? I travel a lot. And so they went and instantly looked up on the computer and gave me the employee ID of the person that did it. And from that, actually had enough of their name so I could match that up just on a Google search with social media. And so I actually found their social media accounts. I called the carrier and said, you've been lying to me the whole time. I know what store it is. I know that's when they said that this was the employee's last day and that they picked three people. They SIM swapped three people. You were one of the unlucky ones. But up until that point, they were in liability mode and refused to give me any information. I filed a police report, and the police tried to call the hotline they have for the police, and they refused to give them any information and said you have to have a subpoena. So I would have to get an attorney to then get a subpoena just simply to know what happened to me. And so that's just sort of the nature of the way these carriers work, is that they go into liability protection mode when your mobile account gets stolen away, and they end up through that process protecting the hacker more than they end up protecting their own customer base, because they don't want to get sued. They don't want to provide any information that allow you to sue them.
Exactly. Now, if you remember, there was a couple years ago a case in New York where a private person had $16 million in Bitcoin. That's a number I remember. I might be wrong. Stolen. And it was a bunch of teenagers who did the stealing, and they had convinced a telecom employee to essentially move the mobile phone over to their phone, and then they compromised the MFA, they reset the passwords, they did everything they needed to do to get a control of that guy's Bitcoin account and then move that money to their account.
Yeah, that was a 15-year-old kid. He was 15 years old at the time. He was working with another adult who I think was around 23, 24. And that guy was Michael Terrapin, and he got around 24.5 million of Bitcoin stolen. And then a guy named Rob Ross, who they're unrelated, didn't know each other. That same 15-year-old kid ended up SIM swapping him and stole 1.8 million of crypto, mostly Bitcoin from him, which was like a lot of what his basically life, like his, he had, he, and I've met both of them. So Rob Ross actually consulted for us for a while. I've met Michael Terrapin at the Bitcoin conference down in Miami Beach in person. And to listen to Rob Ross talking about how he had to sit down with his daughter and say that, to tell her that her college education was gone, and he's a really smart guy. He had a great career. So we ended up getting, that back. And both of them ended up suing the carrier. And it turns out
And that is the case that I'm talking about that
yeah.
to me was a little disturbing because it was, I just looked it up, it's Turpin versus AT&T Mobility. And in that case, they basically said that AT&T's was limited to damages that were a part of their contract value. So essentially, whatever the fees for mobile service and of that nature. But their breach of contract was limited, and all fraud and punitive damages were thrown out, right? So here was a person that lost millions and millions of dollars, and the people that enabled it incurred hundreds of dollars of liability.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been asked to be an expert witness multiple times. Attorneys will call up Efani, get to me, and say like, "Hey, I'm I've got 8 victims." One guy who called up, he's like, "I got 8 different victims. I'd love to have you as a witness for all of them." And he told me that the defense was basically that the carriers were saying that the SIM swapping has been normalized in the industry across all the carriers, and therefore their defense is that it's normalized, and so there's not much you can really do about it. And by the way, like, you're only having to pay, $60, $80 per month, so that should be the limit. And then also, when you become a victim, you then realize that all the carriers have slipped in arbitration clauses. And so it's really, you're going to arbitration court. And there have been some people that have been winning, but they're winning like 20, 30, 35 cents on the dollar. And then they've got to pay an attorney out of that. And so the carriers are trying to make themselves more secure, but at the same time, they're trying to remove all of the liability because they've done the math, and it's too expensive for them to actually secure and tighten things up. They just have too many holes.
Why? Why? Why is it so expensive to tighten things up? Why can't you force the situation that you just can't have a third party swap the SIM? If you are going to do it, you must verify ID. You must go into the store and show real ID and proof you are who you are. Why can't it be done over the phone? I guess I'm curious, Mark. What is
Yeah.
their reason? What's
So
so
the way that
expensive about?
the industry is built is all the carriers have this portal access, right? It's a dashboard that they allow people to log into that can make these changes. And then what people don't realize is that most of the phone stores are actually independently owned. Like, there might be somebody that owns just your local store, but there might be somebody that owns like 300 stores across Arizona, or 800 stores across the US, and it's independently owned. And all those stores have portals. All the customer support, when you call 800, they have portal access. All the resellers like Efani, we have portal access. So you give us just a couple bits of information about your account, we can go into this portal, and we can move your phone number over to Efani without us having to talk to your carrier and without you having to talk to your carrier. You don't even have to verbally talk to them. You don't have to approve it. You just have to give a couple bits of information, and the change can be made. So what the carriers have done is they've put all all the money and investment, of course, into the network, but into the sales side of things. So to sell you and get you on lease agreements for devices and the latest and most expensive package for your mobile service. And that's where their investment is. But when it comes to you ever wanting to leave, that's where they're like, okay, you're going to leave. We don't want to spend any money on you leaving. You leave, we don't even want to talk to you. And so it's that portal access that's just given to so many people that makes it really impossible for them to put these processes down. And I think it's kind of like the same way, like people always wonder, like, well, why doesn't the bank, why are most of the financial institutions, banking institutions in the US still using SMS for verification? And one of the problems is that if all of a sudden they said, okay, people can use YubiKeys or authenticator apps, imagine the customer support issues they would have. All the people that they lost their phone that had the authenticator app on it, and all those expenses, all that burden would become on the bank instead. So it's like, okay, we're going to deal with fraud. We're going to allow this sort of insecure method. And it's kind of the same way with the telecoms is that they've done the math on it, and it's just cheaper for them to allow this, you know, fraud or whatever you want to call it, in trade off of just getting more revenues, getting more customers. And so one
I
of the
guess the
things like
thing is that it's now this is something that's not an inconvenience. It has real life consequences. So therefore, the basic agreements should be nullified. I mean, it's like you remember back in the day when I forget which car company it was, they were flipping cars all over the place and they knew the design was bad, but they still said, well, we'll let the cars go flip over because it's cheaper to pay the insurance claims than it is to actually fix the design flaw in the system, right?
yeah, I remember the 60 Minutes had an episode on that. I don't remember the car, but
I don't remember the car
yeah.
specifically right now either, but then they had a big problem eventually. Eventually, it cost them a fortune. So at some point, there's going to be a smart attorney that comes along that's going to successfully stick it to these guys. And I mean, this is, it used to be telephone, a mobile device was a luxury optional product. Now it's become ubiquitous in life, and you really can't transact many things without it.
But yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
or
it's in a lot of these SIM swap attacks, it's not necessarily about money. It can be about harassment. It can be about blackmail. It can be about revenge. It can be like we have customers that got SIM swapped before us, obviously, and then after they became a victim, moved their mobile service over to Efani, and so I get to hear all these stories. So one of them had her and her boyfriend built up an IT services company selling equipment in Phoenix. They break up. The boyfriend SIM swaps her because he actually, was paying for the mobile account. Use that to basically destroy her entire business, put her into bankruptcy. I get to hear all these stories. I hear stories that about people getting divorced and SIM swaps, and sort of they think of me, I guess, as like a bartender because maybe because I've been a victim too. So they end up telling me, more than you would think about their life. But yeah, it's not just money. It's they can go after your business. One of the big stories of 2025 was Marks and Spencer. So a middle manager that was one of the IT guys, who's part of the IT division, he gets SIM swapped. They use that SIM swap then to impersonate him inside of Marks and Spencer to get a password reset. They reset a password somewhere in the IT space of the company and used that to load ransomware within their payment system and took down their whole point of sale service terminals for the whole company. And it cost them $350 million. Something like that happens. It makes me wonder that it probably was an insider. They probably knew this guy had a certain kind of access. It could be even somebody sitting next to you, right? And if somebody inside that company, wanted to just take out revenge. So one SIM swap cost Marks and Spencer 350 plus million euros. And there's a couple of insurance companies in the US in 2024, 2025 that SIM swaps of executives ended up getting a data breach of 68,000 customer records or something like that. And so it's not always about like just trying to attack you or trying to attack me. It's now becoming attacks on corporations, on executives, on middle management of the right key personnel. Because once they take that away, like you can do a lot of damage to somebody's life, to a company, and especially with BYOD strategies, a lot of companies are allowing their employees to pay for their own mobile service, pay for their own phone, use it however they want, and those are basically like Trojans, a Trojan horse. If somebody can steal your mobile account away or hack into your mobile device and get into company applications. And so the mobile phone and mobile device is becoming more important every single day.
It very much is. I'm surprised. Well, actually, I'm not surprised that Congress has not stepped in on this topic. I'm sure the telecom lobby is very powerful.
Yeah, the FCC's tried. I mean, they've come out and said like, okay, you have to put in further restrictions, and they've tried. But the problem is you have insiders, you have bribery, you have impersonation. It's very, very difficult to prevent. You have people that are just gifted with the social engineering, and
Of course.
there's a great
Kevin
video.
Mitnick.
Yeah, there's a
He,
great video from this lady that's a social engineering expert, was at the DEF CON show in Vegas, and they paired her up with a reporter, and they sat down at a table and they put a camera on him live. And he's like, "So what are you going to do?" She's, I'm gonna I'm gonna deal with your mobile operator." And he's like, "No, they got my back." And they're filming this, and basically she puts a YouTube video of a baby crying in the background, and she calls his carrier and she says, "We got married a couple months ago. My husband's been bothering me about getting my name added to the account." And in like 90 seconds, she was able to add her name on his account and actually change the PIN on his account. And he's got his hands over his face. He can't believe that she's able to do this and to be able to do it so quickly. And so she added a name, an email, and I think it was a PIN change. And then she said, "Okay, thank you," and hung up. Now, what she could do is wait 2 hours, call back, and now she doesn't even need to trick them. She would just call back the 800 number and say, "This is, Amber, and this is the PIN, this is the email," and it wouldn't even be trickery at that point. So, and these are the kind of things that people learn too. Like they go into a store, impersonate me, for example. If let's say I had T-Mobile, they could go into a T-Mobile store, even if they failed and they're like, "Oh, you need your social security." They just leave the store, drive 3 miles to another next T-Mobile store. In the meantime, get whatever they need, try it again. There's actually a news story of, it came out like about 4 or 5 months ago. I think it was in Texas where some woman was trying to get revenge on some other lady that she didn't like. And when she finally got caught, she'd been in like 122 stores trying to do this, trying to SIM swap. And finally that she got busted doing it. But people will go in and pretend they're you, and they'll use the sales spiff of selling a phone. So let's say I go into a store and I get verified as you. I get a phone and a line off your account. Now you won't know this until your next billing cycle. But I leave that store. I then call the 800 number from a phone and a line on your account. And so the person behind the 800 number, it's like, well, the phone's on the account, the line's on the account. You're already, 2, 3 steps into verification, and say, "Oh, I want to switch the old number to the new one." And so they're now using like 2, 3 steps to like social engineer and catch people off guard. And it's just a very difficult thing to stop. If you're selling phones, financing phones, and family plans are the weakest link. And so, they don't have to impersonate you. If you've got a daughter, you've got, spouse on your family plan, they can impersonate that person. And certainly I've heard a number of stories. We have two of our customers. One of them, before they switched over, a co-founder of a crypto company was on his father's family plan, and somebody impersonated the father and then used that to then move the son's account, the co-founder, his mobile line onto this new phone that he bought off of his father's account. They then used that to take over their X.com account. It was a Twitter as a business account for their crypto startup. And then they tweeted out that they were selling a new token. And then they sold a
Wow.
bunch of tokens. So in that case, like, who do you sue? Like, is it the carrier? Is it the the two guys. Is it X.com? Is it what is it? A lot. And anyone who's into Bitcoin watching this will remember that when the SEC announced the approval of the first Bitcoin ETF and it came out early and it was approved, that was actually a SIM swap. Somebody at the SEC got their mobile account stolen away that owned the SEC's X.com account. They then took over the SEC's X.com and announced the approval of Bitcoin. So they probably loaded up on hundreds of millions in Bitcoin, announced that approval early. Bitcoin goes up $3,000, $4,000, just dump it all. And then, a couple hours, 2 hours later, 3 hours, whatever it was, then they discover like, oh, this is like an accident. And that it ended up being as simple as somebody's mobile account got stolen away that managed that SEC X.com account.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what you're describing, does it also not apply to the world of Signal 7? I'm sure a lot of people don't know about it, but why can't I'm sure I could go get someone who has access to the Signal 7 dashboard, and instead of swapping, I could tap your phone
Yeah, I
or
mean, there's different
very
things you can do. So certainly, so like Efani, we stopped offering 3G and 2G back in 2021, and so we went with just LTE and 5G. The SS7 is a protocol that was developed in like 1978, 79, implemented in the early 80s. And the problem is it was a global protocol, so you couldn't change it without like ripping apart the whole SS7 that made everything work. Your landlines, 800 number routing, SS7 routing, and all of that. Now, when they moved to LTE and 5G, that's using diameter protocols, and so that removes SS7, at least like 99.9% of your usage of SS7. And it's one of the reasons why we stopped offering the and only supported LTE and 5G since 2000, around the end of 2021. And then all the carriers over between like 2022 and 2024, I think all of them shut off their 3G and 2G. And so that really limits the SS7. But there are other there's IMSI catchers and which are just homemade devices that can intercept between you and the cell towers. And again, that affects mainly like 3G and below. And so with the Fani, when you buy a Fani, one of the things we do, like because we're set up as a reseller of AT&T and Verizon, we're doing LTE and 5G, US, Canada, Mexico. But then we also provide free, and it's optional, but it's free. We also provide high speed data globally, 200 plus countries, because we want all of our customers to stay on LTE and 5G globally. So if you're going to take that vacation to Bali, Indonesia, or to an island in Thailand or Australia, wherever you're going, business vacation, you want to be on LTE and 5G because those are encrypted protocols. Those are using diameter. Now, it doesn't mean it's 100% perfect, but it is, 100 times better than the old 3G SS7 protocols.
wow. So give us a little bit about Efani. So are you guys a telecom provider? Are you a registered phone company? What exactly is Efani?
Yeah, so we are what's known as an MVNO, mobile virtual network operator, and
Okay.
so we're a reseller of AT&T and T and Verizon, but we are a full MVNO in the sense that we own the accounts. Nobody at AT&T or Verizon, nobody else can touch our customers at all. And so the first difference, you could always go to AT&T directly as an example, or you can get AT&T through Efani. So the first thing that we're doing is that, as I said before, when you port your number over to Efani, we're unplugging you from those portals. So nobody on the planet, you could even give all your information to somebody and say, here's my passcode, this is my address, and all of that. They can't just port you out of Efani. We're human based. You have to come through our verification process, and so we have very few salespeople, but when somebody wants to do a risky change, we have a team. That's where we're focusing our energy on our employees is somebody wants to make a risky change. Okay, let's put a spotlight on this and we're going to go through this verification process and make sure we're doing the right thing. The other thing that we're doing that's different is that we're prepaid. And what that means is that we're not required to have KYC. When you go to any of the carriers, you're basically opening up a credit account. And that's one reason why you're susceptible is because you got this credit account at Mint Mobile and T-Mobile and AT&T, Verizon. So we're prepaid, and prepaid lives under a different set of laws in terms of KYC. So when we set you up, the
For our
only thing
audience, explain KYC real quick, Mark.
that's know your customer.
Know your
So,
customer.
so the carriers have to know like everything about you, your payment information. They have your social security number. They have your all your payment information, but they have your birth date. They have your social security. You have a credit account with them. Now with us, we're prepaid. So technically you could, use a gift card or you could, some kind of Amex card that's not your name and, buy a Efani, and you don't have to give us your real name, but there's some cons to that. And there's people that will sell people on that idea, but just be aware that the problem is that if you use your mobile number for banking and you switch your mobile number to be completely anonymous and you're now Batgirl or Batman, well, when you do banking with, Chase Bank and Goldman Sachs, they pay third parties for reputation, and they'll do queries against that. So if it shows up that somebody's trying to do a $50,000 withdrawal and their mobile number is known as Batman, then it gets rejected. So just be aware of that. So the only thing that we do is we can do the full anonymous. We do have customers that are, superhero names, but those kind of people, they don't use SMS verification for anything for the financial institutions anyways. But the only thing we tell people is we're going to give it a snippet of your name. So those queries work, but the carrier does not have your personal information. And we want to keep as little information about you. We don't collect call records. We have a no log based policy. We're not collecting your call records, your SMS records. The only thing we see is that you've made X number of phone calls and that you've X amount of data for that billing cycle, but none of the details. And our philosophy is the less that we carry, the less we hold, the less can ever be, divulged, because you never know, right? We do the best we can possibly. Everything's
But
encrypted.
can't people bypass you? And then if you're reselling AT&T, just go to AT&T and say, "Hey, this is Efani's customer. Give me the details on this number."
There's been people that have tried to do it. Yeah. I mean, and we actually have a number of pen testers, like they're professional, that their career is pen testers, right? And they become customers of ours. And so they'll actually do like pen tests against themselves. Now, we don't recommend doing that just because the carriers don't want to incent, people going out trying to like trick their carriers and things like that. But they can't bypass in the sense of convincing somebody at AT&T or Verizon to make a change to their account. We have full ownership over that. And we back up and we actually guarantee against mobile SIM swaps with a line of insurance that covers up to $5 million. And so we're motivated to protect you. So you could almost simplify our company down to, we want to provide a global mobile service with a boutique sort of white glove type experience. And we want to make sure that our insurance policy is never used. That insurance policy is like behind our back. And we want to make sure that that insurance policy is never used. And it's not because we love you so much as a customer. We love our customers, of course, but it's because our business and our reputation is based on that insurance policy, and to make sure it never gets used. And so while everybody else, their motivation is they never want to have to apologize and they never want to be yelled at. But if you do get SIM swapped, then they're probably going to go into liability protection mode. And with Efani, our goal is to make sure that insurance policy is never utilized. Now we're doing more than just, SIM swap protection. There is some privacy in the sense that the carrier stores and all the resellers and everything can't get access to like all your personal information, and they can't make changes. We don't sell phones, so that shuts down, one of the main gaps of these carriers have. And we control the customer support. And so we monitor everything. It takes multiple people to approve a very risky transaction. And, and that's our business, is to make sure that people are safe. But keeping people on high speed globally and providing, and we're also becoming really an excellent mobile service provider.
I was going to say, are you targeting this towards an average consumer or corporations? Who is your audience at Efani?
So that's a great question. So we're targeting people that have money to lose, reputation to lose, want to avoid like blackmail, or they have a business that can be damaged, severely damaged. And so through that, we have a ton of executives that are spread out through all kinds, all the Fortune 1000 companies. There's people that, because there are a lot of them BYOD. And so we have a lot of CEOs, for example, like a lot of cybersecurity companies, their CEOs comes on a funny because if you're a CEO of a cybersecurity company and you get mobile SIM swap, then it make you look silly. And so they want to protect from that. But we're starting to cover, we're getting family offices. And so family offices, we're starting to get SMBs, and then certainly anyone who travels a lot. So if you're a consumer and you're retired, but you go to Europe a couple times a year or Asia a couple times per year, our even without the security and the insurance backing it up, our service for global travel is incredible. And one of those features that we do now is because we're doing this dual eSIM config is what we call it. So your primary SIM could be AT&T. Your secondary SIM is our global data eSIM. And and so if you have the iPhone 13 and above, and because we enable Wi-Fi calling globally, we actually with the iPhone 13, it's actually the iPhone 12 SE third gen and above. You land in Tokyo, you can actually receive phone calls using that data eSIM. So they're calling your Efani number and it will ring. And to you, it's just a regular phone call, but the connection is it's using that second data eSIM as the Wi Fi connection. And so the iPhone 13 and above now becomes a global roaming tool. And you can actually call back to the US unlimited over that. You don't even need a Wi-Fi connection. You could be out in the countryside of Thailand. Your phone's going to ring. You don't have to pay the $10 per day or the $100 per month. I think they actually raised it to $12 per day now. With Afani, if you've got the iPhone 12 SE third gen and above, and you travel a couple times, we're an absolute no brainer, regardless of the fact that we have security and insurance. But you throw that in, and now we're keeping you secure and insured like on a global basis. There's only
On a
15 countries in the world that where this Wi-Fi calling does not work. And it's countries like Iraq and Pakistan and Dubai for some reason blocks Wi-Fi calling. But for 185, 186 countries around the world, we turn phones into not only global roaming phones, but secure and insured at the same time.
From a cost basis perspective, how do you guys stack up to AT&T or Verizon or as the case may be?
Yeah, so for individual plans, like I said, we have only one plan, and everything I've talked about to this point are all just in that plan. I haven't
Okay.
talked about any add-ons yet. Anything I've mentioned is not an add-on. It's just in the plan, and so it's $99 per month. That includes taxes and fees and all of that. That includes the insurance. That includes our commitment and guarantee, and it includes the mobile service with this global coverage on the data side of things. And how that compares with AT&T these days, the type of people that sign up with us, they're not necessarily worried about that extra 15 or $20 price. They have something to lose, and they don't want to lose it. And as a victim, I still have PTSD over it, and you don't want to be a victim of it. And a lot of people know people who are victims of it and know the pain. And so whether, that price makes sense for people, it really comes down to, kind of have to think about, well, what can I lose? And is it worth, that loss? But we have people that actually say they're in certain parts of the country and they pay Verizon, $115. And so I think it's rare, but there are people who say that I spend 150, 180, and maybe that's because of roaming, international calling, and all of that. Where with our plan, you can pay for the unlimited international calling at $15 per month, or if you think you're going to stay within those 500 minutes, you can pay zero for it.
Got it. That's fantastic. We're already at the hour mark. Anything you want to plug as well for our audience to know?
And because I get into this, I mean, we could probably go for 3 hours easy about all the different things that we
Oh,
do.
you're going to have to come back, but that's another.
Yeah,
We're going to.
because we could
We
talk
didn't
about
even.
talk about the AI threats and mobile and cybersecurity and general. But the one thing I do want to throw in is that we like people that like to educate people on cybersecurity. We like to give out something to the community. So if you want to, you can get a $99 discount off of Efani if you go to afani.com/promo,
Okay.
PROMO, and a little pop up will come up and say you get a $99 discount. If you go to afani.com, you get 0 discount. If you go to afani.com/promo, you'll get the $99 off. And we also offer a 60-day money back guarantee. So if on the 60th day or 59th day, you're not feeling like we pleased you or the service isn't working for you, then you can get a refund as well. So we're trying to make it very, very easy. Beyond that, yeah, there's so much we could talk about. I would love to come back, and we
Well,
don't even have
Mark,
to
you're
talk
going to
about
have to come
Omni.
back.
So, yeah.
We did not even scratch the surface here. But thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you as well.
Take care.